Great. So, hey everybody in video land. Today is a seminar on how to use Garmin BaseCamp on Macs. Garmin BaseCamp is a tool used for plotting routes on your Garmin device. So if you would like to have the device take you on a specific route, like a twisty route or an exciting route, or just wanted to follow where you wanted to go rather than simply A to B, that's where we would use BaseCamp. People have loads of frustrations with BaseCamp because it's not particularly intuitive to use straight off the bat, and there's plenty of idiosyncrasies which I've figured out. The second reason people have frustrations with BaseCamp is that they plot routes and things at home and they look good, and then they get out into the field on their motorbike and the route doesn't follow correctly. And now you're in the field, maybe far from home. The route has gone wrong and you've no way of fixing it. So that's another reason why people have frustrations with BaseCamp. But today we'll look at those sorts of things, and I'll show you how to plot reliable routes so you can enjoy them on your motorcycle. Okay. Question already, is there a way to jump to the next via point other than zooming in and out trying to get back on the route? Yes, there is. I'll show you that, the first question that came up. There's a function on the device called skip via point, and we will get to that when we look at simulating driving the route. Okay, so if we go right back to the beginning, downloading and installing BaseCamp is really easy. You just go to garmin.com/BaseCamp there, and scroll right down to the bottom and you have downloads for Windows and Mac. The Windows and Mac versions have a great deal of similarity, but there are a few subtle differences which I'll try and point out as well. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, each has their own strengths. So there's some great features and things you can do on the Mac version that you can do on the PC version, but they're harder. And similarly, there's things you can do on the PC version that are more difficult to do on the Mac version. I think the Mac version is actually easier to use overall. So if you're Mac users, I think you're in a good place with that. Okay, so once we've installed BaseCamp, the first thing we must do before we do anything is align our activity profiles in BaseCamp with the activity profiles on the device. If we don't do this, our routes are unlikely to navigate correctly regardless of what we do. So by that I mean we launch BaseCamp and we click on the drop down on the activity here. And we go down to manage activities. Today we're going to be working with the motorcycling activity and possibly the driving activity profile. The specific activity profile you choose didn't used to be as important as it is now. So on my older devices, I used to plot routes with a driving activity profile and send them to the device and just use them on my motorcycle with the device in driving mode, and that was fine. That's not fine anymore because the latest generation of Garmin devices, like the Zemo XT, which I have, they have incident reporting, which is just a nicer way of saying collision detection. So they detect they detect if you've been in an accident, essentially. And the settings for car mode on the device are a lot more sensitive than motorcycle mode. So if you try and use the device on your motorcycle in car mode, every 15-20 seconds it says incident detected. Because it thinks you've been in an incident, because no car should be going that fast or should be vibrating that much and so on. So now more than ever, it's really important to choose the correct activity profile. And if we're doing motorcycle routes, it should be motorcycle. Anyway, so aligning this, what I mean by this is we need to click on activity and go down to manage activities. And then we need to select the one we want to use. So let's select motorcycling, and we need to click on Edit Routing Preferences. I'm going to just bring this over to the left. So you see, we've got several things to consider here. The calculation mode, so fastest time, curvy roads, or shortest distance. For route plotting, I would recommend you always set that to fastest time, because that's the one that deviates the least from the paths you're choosing. If you choose curvy roads, it thinks, well, there's a curvier way of doing this. Or if you choose shortest distance, it takes you down like farm tracks and things like that. So fastest time is great. The road type avoidances, I would uncheck all of these, perhaps except unpaved roads, because we don't want it to avoid things we're plotting. We just want it to follow them. And then the feature type avoidances, the carpool lanes is fine. Seasonal road closures, they're all fine. I have U-turns unchecked as well. Okay, so we need to look at this, and now we need to look at the device. So I'm going to power up the device now, which is here. So on my other camera, I'm going to fire this up. This is the Garmin Zumo XT. This camera doesn't do the screen justice. The screen on this is phenomenal, and I'm going to do a proper review on it soon, but don't think this is what it looks like. This is just the best I could present at the moment. So on the device now, we need to go to the usage mode and set that to the one we're setting up now, motorcycling, which is fine. And notice you've got a little motorcycling icon next to it. That's going to appear in a couple of places. So we click on save, click on settings. And now you see under navigation, we've got our little motorcycle next to it there. We click on navigation, set route preferences. So we need to make sure calculation time matches the calculation time we have here. So fastest time, faster time, so slight variation, but that needs to be the same. Okay. And then we need to go to avoidances. So we need to get these settings here to match what we have in BaseCamp. And interestingly, the terminology is different. So depending on the locale you've set up for your Garmin device, it'll use different terminology. So in BaseCamp, it says interstates and major highways and so on. On my Zumo XT, it says motorways because that's the sort of European or UK terminology for that. But terminology aside, we just need to make sure these things match. So that matches pretty much everything that I've done there. So we're off to a good start. If we wanted to do the same for the car profile, I'll just show you that quickly. So in BaseCamp, we would drop this down to driving. Then on the device, we would change the usage mode to car, save, and then again go to settings. Now we've got our car next to it, go to navigation and check the calculation mode is the same. And then also check that the avoidances are the same. And now we're on the front foot, we're off to a good start. That is also very important because when you send a route to the device, the activity profile is carried to the device. So if you send a route to the device and you've used the car or driving activity profile, that's what it will select on the device. And then it'll even change the device mode to that mode. So that's actually very important. But as I say, we need to make sure these things match or we're going to be on the back foot straight away. So we've got those things to match. So we can go back to BaseCamp now and kick off from here. So, okay, so next thing we need to do is get the detailed map. Now, this is many people's biggest frustration with BaseCamp when they install it initially. So what happens is they install BaseCamp and they zoom in on where they live. Like, so I'm going to zoom in close to where I live, like here, London, and they see a map that has no detail whatsoever. And then maybe they try and plot a route on there. So I'll show you an example here. And they choose maybe the motorcycling activity profile and try and plot a route like so. And it doesn't stick to the roads. It just goes randomly wherever you plot the points. And this is because what we're viewing is the global map. The global map isn't going to be useful to us. The reason the global map is included is so that when you launch BaseCamp, it at least shows something. If the global map wasn't included, there'd just be a blank screen and you'd think it was even worse. So in order to get a map we can use, there's two things we can do. So firstly, we can plug our device into the computer. And if we plug our device into the computer, it will load on the left here under My Garmin Devices, and all of the maps that are on the device will be ready, selectable, ready to use. The second thing we can do, which is perhaps more useful, is install the map on our device to the computer. Now, in order to do that, we need to use Garmin Express. So to do that, we would go to garmin.com/express and download this utility here. So download for Mac and download for Windows. And once we've downloaded and installed that, we'd launch it and it looks like this. So you'd have the home screen and there'd be no devices there. So you need to click plus to add a device. Then once your device is added, we can click on the device And within the device, we can go to map options. And then within there, you've got install to computer. So you click on that, and then the map on the device will be available to use in BaseCamp. So I've done that. So if I now click on this drop down here, in fact, I made this slightly bigger. I click on this drop down here, I've got the maps from my last 2 devices. So these 2019, this 2019 one here is from my older Zemo 590LM, and this 2021 is from the Zemo XT. So if I click on that now, if I zoom in, suddenly we've got map detail. And now, if we plot any sort of a route, so again, we'll do it in this list here. It's going to follow the roads. So now if I go from here to here, you see, oops, oh no, that's not good. It crashed. That can happen sometimes. BaseCamp just closes for some reason. Normally it happens when you try and do something a bit more complicated, like plot a route from a track. But this time it decided to just do it for a simple reason. So I'll show you that again. So I was going to show you an example where we, there's the BaseCamp quit unexpectedly. So you can tell it's live, which is good. It's good and it's bad. Like when you record videos, you've more opportunity to iron these things out. But when you do live, it's sort of a more realistic representation of what things are like. So, okay, we were going to plot a simple route to show that it's actually going to follow the roads, and second time lucky. There we go. See, it's now following the roads, which is what I was trying to show you earlier. So now we understand how to get the detailed map. We're ready to go. Okay, so just looking through my list. Okay, next is how to make the map more usable. So there's a couple of things we can do to this. And there was a question actually that came up from someone in the comments to one of the videos. Is like he mentioned that he had a fairly powerful computer, a fairly powerful Mac, but the map was sort of quite laggy and took a while to render. So there's a couple of things you can do to that. The simplest thing you can do is change the detail level here. So if we move this slider at the bottom, and it's quite easy to miss because it sort of fades out. If we slide over that and move that further to the left, we get less detail and it sort of moves a bit quicker. If we move it further to the right, let's get all the way to the right, it'll take a while to render, and we get a lot of detail. So this is probably what he was, or this chap was experiencing. So somewhere in the middle is pretty good. But also the map contains a lot of detail that we don't actually need. So I can show you how to remove some of that. So for that, again, we go to our activity profiles and go down to manage activities. And then instead of clicking on this one, which is routing preferences, we click on this like edit map display preferences. And what this does is it brings up this menu, and this menu determines what will display for each activity profile. So let's choose motorcycling again. So all of these features are going to appear when you select motorcycling. Now, some of these we probably don't care about, like transportation is things like airports and railways and so on. So now I've made the airports disappear. If you see that, I'll bring them back quickly. But if I'm out on my motorbike, airports are not a high priority for me, so I'll remove those. If I expand out other business services, communications, Garmin dealer, I don't need any of those either. Don't need marine, lodging, let's say maybe hospital, don't need that either. Fuel is a useful one, so I'll leave that one and maybe just remove all of the others. Now, there's one of them that I want to draw particular attention to, and that is cities. So you see, if I zoom out and give that a second to load, all of these dots here, and if you bring in the detail a bit more, see there's tons of them, tons and tons of these black dots. And these are all towns and cities in the UK. And unfortunately, the way the Garmin works, it considers everything a city. So Fleet, for example, is a town, it's not a city. London is a city and Leeds is a city and so on. So it thinks everything is a city, and then you get all these dots on your map. So if you're quite familiar with the area that you're plotting in, and you know the towns, you may not need these at all. So if I uncheck cities, look at that. Wow, isn't that nice? Suddenly we've cleared up all of that noise from the map just by doing that. So let's remove banks and ATMs and auto services and attractions. And transportation, again, is an interesting one, which I want to draw your attention to a bit more as well. So if I zoom in the countryside over here, the way Garmin works as well, let me bring up the detail a bit more so we can see some more of those roads. The way Garmin interprets things is that in England, at least, or in the UK, every road, A road and above, is considered a highway, right? So if I uncheck highways, then they all disappear, which is nice. So now it's highlighting all the minor roads, or we call it sort of B roads in England. And B roads are really outstanding ride-out roads normally. In fact, some of these I know, B4000, I've been on that and so on. So if you were looking to put together a ride-out that was just based on B roads, or called a B road blast, if you like, unchecking highways is a great way to highlight all the B roads, and then you can plot between them. So I'm going to leave it at that at the moment. I think so. We've removed everything. We've even removed cities as well. We might bring cities back a bit later, but let's run with that for now. And click on OK. So now we've got a map that's a bit more usable. I'll bring highways back in a second, but I want to show you something quickly. So with my map like this, I'll try and find one that ends. Even the roads that don't appear here, like for example here, this B4508, see, it abruptly ends. It doesn't really end, it just turns into an A road or something like that. Even if we've made all of those roads disappear, when we're plotting a route, if we plot, so say if I'm going from here and I want to go over here, it will find the roads in between. So if you're doing your B road blast, if you like, or plotting a B road ride out, even though those roads aren't appearing on the map, it will still find ways between the B roads that are visible. So you don't need to worry too much about the fact that we've made them disappear for when we're plotting that type of route. Okay, so let me bring back the A roads just so our map looks a bit better. So again, I'll go to Manage Activities, Motorcycling, Display, and it was Transportation Highway, and we'll bring all of those back there. Okay, so we're good to go. But you see, you can manipulate the map detail, and especially if you zoom in quite far, like you see we have a fuel station there, but having all of that other noise removed makes it much easier to plot nice routes, I find. Okay, so a couple of other minor things before we move on to the filing system. How to change units. So it's under BaseCamp Preferences, and it's under, I think it's General. Yes, there we go. So here you can change things like from miles to kilometers or so on, depending on what works best for you. Changing these settings doesn't change any of the data, it just changes how it's displayed. So if you've made a load of routes in miles and you want to change them to kilometers or vice versa, you can simply do that here. If you've made a mess of this and you want to change it back to factory defaults, you can hit here to reset to factory defaults, but it's not that difficult really. Just choose the units which are best for you. Okay, so next, how the filing system works. So to show you how this works, we're going to plot a few things. The filing system in BaseCamp works based on, let me move that down to medium. It works based on folders and lists. Okay, so folders contain lists, and lists contain route data. So let me zoom in a bit more, and so we can see some of the parks. So this is the examples we're going to use here. So everything that you do lives in the route level, and it's displayed in various lists. So I'm going to create an example list. I'm going to click on the route and click, an example folder, a new list folder. I'm going to call it example folder. Folder 1. Okay, and within that folder, in order to save things into it, I need to create a list. So I'm going to create a new list here and call it example list. So working within this list now, if I choose the waypoint tool and I create some waypoints, so I'll create one in Regent's Park, I'll create one in Hyde Park, and I'll create one in, that should be Holland Park. Yep, there we go. So now, okay, so within that list, I've got 3 waypoints. And in fact, let's go and create a route in there as well, just for extra. So let's go and create a route from north of the park to south of the park. Oh no, it is not happy with me today. Let's try and open it again. I'm not sure why it's doing that. I may need to install the latest version. But yeah, it's not normally this sketchy, I would say. Normally I get better results with BaseCamp. And it's back. So let's go and recreate our list. I'm not doing anything too processor intensive on this computer either, so I'm not sure why it would be doing that. Okay, so let's go to City Navigator Europe, and I was showing you how to create routes. How the filing system works. That's what I was showing you how to do. Okay, so again, I'm going to create a new list folder. I'm going to call it example folder 1. And a new list within there, so example list. And once again, I'm going to create 3 waypoints. So I'm going to create one in Regent's Park, I'm going to create one in Hyde Park, and one in Holland Park. Okay. I won't tempt fate by creating another route. We'll do that a bit later on. Okay, so you see these 3 waypoints now sit in that list. If I go up to the route level, they also sit at the route level there, Hyde Park, Holland Park, and Regent's Park. Now, if I create another list, so let's go and create another list here and call it example list 2. List 2, I'll rename this one example list 1. There we go. Oops, 1. Okay, so I can copy things now from one list into the other. So let's go and copy that and put it into list 2. Paste. Okay, so you see now that waypoint Holland Park, that appears in this 1 and it appears in this 2 and it also appears in the route there. Now, if I delete this, so I have 2 options. If I right click on it, I can delete it from the list, or delete it from my collection. So if I delete it from the list, it's simply deleted from that list, but it remains up here at the top. You can copy it back. If you delete it from my collection, so I'll show you that next. Right click and delete from my collection. That deletes it from everywhere. So it's gone from the other list and also from the root level here. So the way to think about it is that everything sits at the root level and it's just exposed in the folders and in the lists. When you're working with these, I would suggest in general, if you just delete from the list and leave it in my collection, because all of these things don't take up that much data really, and you might want to reuse them again later. So I would simply delete them from the list, so you can use it again later. So that's how that piece works. People create folders for trips or seasons or different things like that. Some people create folders for different states in America where they plot their or plan their rides and so on. So just do whatever works for you. But that's how that piece fits together. So what I'll do as well, I'll change to one of the other maps and maybe we'll get more success with route planning with that. Maybe it won't crash as much. Okay, so now we understand the filing system. Next, let's move on to plotting some routes. So the first thing to be aware of really is the route plotting algorithms, if you like. So we looked at these slightly earlier when we looked at the calculation mode, fastest time, shortest distance, and curvy road. So I'll just touch on that briefly. So if I zoom out and I plot a route out in the countryside, so let's go over here. So from north to south, there we go, and good. That is using the fastest time algorithm. Now, if I go to manage activities, motorcycling, and change the piece there. If I change this now to curvy roads, we should see when I close, if I recalculate the route, which is here, it's now gone a completely different route because I've changed the activity profile route calculation mode to curvy. So it's avoiding the motorways and doing a curvy route. And similarly, if we change it again, so if we go and change it to shortest distance, and then I recalculate this again. So let's go to recalculate route. The shape changes again. So now it's finding the shortest distance. So it just shows you an example of how those influence things. But as I say, for route plotting, the ideal profile is fastest time because that deviates less from what we want to do. Okay, so let's go and plot. Let me recalculate that so it goes back to the fastest time. There we go. Let's delete that so it's not in the way. Okay, so let's go and plot a simple route to begin with. So a simple example is doing a lap of Hyde Park. So this is Hyde Park in London. If you zoom in far enough, it goes white like it's snowed. I prefer it when it's green. So if we wanted to ride around this, for example, on our Garmin device, the way I would set this up would be firstly to choose the correct activity profile. I'll set that all up, and then I would click on the route tool and start plotting. Now, in fact, actually, yeah, this is a good place to show you this, in fact. So when you click on the route tool, the first thing it brings up is this screen saying drag start point here, drag destination here. If you want to start based on existing waypoints, you can drag those up to here and then drag an endpoint, like maybe from the other list, into there as well. But most people, when they want to sort of start plotting routes, they don't want to do that. They just want to start plotting with the mouse. So you can simply dismiss that. That's fine. You don't have to use that. So let's go and plot a route that starts on Queensgate, goes up towards Knightsbridge, goes up towards Marble Arch, comes across towards Notting Hill and comes south on Kensington Church Street and finishes up down here on Gloucester Road. Okay, so when we're plotting our routes, as much as possible, we need to place our via points in clear stretches of road. Like, don't place a via point on a junction or a roundabout, because that can cause problems. On a junction, if it's slightly misplaced, it can send you down that road and make you loop back. On a roundabout is worse, because if you position it slightly off on a roundabout, it can send you right round the roundabout, even though you only want to take the first exit. So always plot in clear stretches of road. Now, the next thing we need to understand is the route structure. So if I double click on the route, we'll see the route here. So routes are made up of via points. People get slightly confused with this as well, or they think that they're made up of waypoints, or they think they're made up of shaping points and via points or so on, but they're not. They're made up of via points. So in this list here is a list of points that the route goes past. There's two types of via point that can be created. Alerting via points, like this one, and non-alerting via points, like this one. See, it says in brackets, won't alert. Now, the Garmin software calls non-alerting via points shaping points. I really dislike that term. That's in fact a bit weak. I really dislike that term intensely because it's misleading. So does that mean that the other via points don't shape the route or so on? No, it doesn't. Every via point on the route shapes it in some form or manner. So when I'm speaking about route plotting and route creating and so on, you'll hear me only refer to alerting via points and non-alerting via points. And that's a good way to think about it. Try and avoid thinking about or using the term shaping points. So what is the difference between the two, and how does it matter in a route? So an alerting via point appears as a flag. If it's the start point, it's like a green flag. If it's the end point, it's a checkered flag. If it's an intermediate via point, so a via point between the start and the end, it appears as a red flag or an orange flag. A non-alerting via point appears as a sort of blue dot on the road. Now, alerting via points do two things. So they alert as you approach them. So it will say arriving at such and such on the left, or approaching such and such as you approach it. Secondly, if you miss an alerting via point, so say if it was misplaced or it was placed in someone's driveway or something like that, if you miss an alerting via point but you stay on the route, so you've only missed it by a small margin, the device will send you back to get it. So think about it as like a flag that you have to pick up. And if you don't pick it up, the device will send you back to get it. You can choose to skip going back to get it by using the skip via point function on the device. It's not really that much hassle, it's just a bit annoying. But if you only plotted a non-alerting via point, which is also known as a shaping point, if you miss one of those but stay on the route, it doesn't send you back to get it. So for that reason, I recommend you set all your intermediate via points to non-alerting. The start point and the end point are compulsory alerting via points. You can't change those. They have to be alerting. But all the others, you can choose what they're going to be. So if you right click on the start point, you see you can't change it to non-alerting. It's grayed out. If you right click on the end point, you can't change that to non-alerting. But all of these intermediate ones, you can. You can select one of them or select all of them and change it to don't alert on arrival. Now, you may be wondering as well why some of these have come up as alerting and some haven't. So if you click on something on the map and the device knows, or sorry, the map knows where it is, like it's recognized, like it's an address or it's a shop or something like that, it appears on the Mac version of BaseCamp, at least, it appears as an alerting via point. If you click on something where it doesn't have an exact fix or address for it, it appears as a non-alerting. So this one here, I've done Knightsbridge. I've clicked in an area of space where it doesn't have anything that it recognizes, so it's gone as non-alerting. Whereas down here, 102 Bayswater, I'm close enough to an address that it's made it non-alerting. But what I would suggest you do is choose the second via point, the second to last via point, right click on it and choose don't alert on arrival, and then it will change them all to non-alerting via points, and then you don't have to worry as much about whether you miss them. Now, if we're happy with this route, the next thing we should do before we send it to the device is check all our via points. So I'm going to click center on selected, which is super useful, and that will center each via point on center on each via point. So that's the start via point. Zoom in on that. Okay, so that is a bit off to the side, which is probably not the best. So I can move that. Now I can move it using the hand tool or the pointer tool. So if I choose the hand tool, this is probably the most useful tool to use for this, because when you get close to it, it turns into a pointer, whereas in the pointer tool, it doesn't. You can still use it like to move it, but it's not as obvious. Whereas with the hand tool, again, if I zoom in on that, zoom in a bit more, it turns into a pointer, so it's just more obvious. So you can move it to a more suitable location. So let's go to the second via point. Yeah, I plotted that on a junction, not very good. So I'll move that up to a clear section of road. The third via point, that looks good. The fourth, that looks good. No, it does not. You see, again, I've plotted that slightly off the road. It's probably not a big deal because it's a non-alerting via point, but still for good housekeeping, let's move it to the correct location. And the fourth, again, not that great. Let's move it again to there. And the fifth one, I think looks okay. Yeah, maybe move it a bit more out there. Okay, so if I'm happy with that and that route is good to go, what I would do next is rename it. So I'll call it lap. Oops, lap. If I could type lap of my park Mac. Okay, and that is now ready to go. Now, before we start sending routes to the device, I'm going to plot a more complex route too, and we'll send that one as well. So blah, 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 just check through that. Yeah, let's create a more complex route. So let's go to Essex to do that. So Essex is up here in sort of northeast of London. and it's a really great place to go for riding your motorcycle because it has some fantastic roads. So what I'll do, I'll search for Finchingfield, and hopefully we can find that from here. It takes a couple of seconds. Almost there. There we go. Finchingfield Post Office. Okay, so there we go. So this is at the heart of Finchingfield. So within Finchingfield, there's all different ways you can go, and most of them are fantastic. So let's plot an example route from here. Let me just remove this. Again, if you've searched for something and you want to remove the results, you just have to click on these binoculars and then it disappears. It's not obvious how to close that, but now you know. Okay, so let's start our route in Finchingfield. So if I was going to do this for real, when you start plotting a route, don't start at the town where you want to start. Start in the direction you want to go, because when you're initiating your route, say if we'd all met in Finchingfield, for example, and we were going off on our ride out, you don't want the device to start trying to navigate you to the exact point in Finchingfield where you said you wanted to start, because it could be behind you, or it could be in a petrol station, or it could be in slightly off the road or so on. You don't want that. You want to start in the direction you want to go. So I would start here, outside of town. So when I kick this off on my device, it's going to start navigating me immediately out of town. So again, try and reduce the complexity as much as possible. So I'm going to come up here onto the B1057. Again, I'm not plotting on the junction, just plot a bit away from it. And then I can pan around here and continue with my route. If you want to continue a route you've started already, if you select it and click on the route tool, it should let me continue. Why isn't it letting me continue? There we go. Sorry, apologies. Double click on it to open the via points with, sorry, let me take a step back. Okay, so we panned around and then I wanted to continue plotting the route. So you need to select the route tool, close that box, double click on the route, and now we can continue from where we were. There we go. Sorry, it took me a while to get there, but we got there. So now I'm going to continue plotting on here. So I'm going to zoom out a bit, and you can use the arrow keys as well, or we can just pan. So I'm going to go up here, and let's plot a bit further up. Let's come across to here. In fact, let's go a bit further north, up to here, and let me see where we're going to go. So we're going to come across to here, maybe down B1057 and come back into Finchingfield. So there's an example of a slightly more complex route. Now, as before, I would change all of my intermediate via points to non-alerting, but you'll see they're already been put in as non-alerting. That's because everywhere I've clicked is out in the countryside in the sticks. So it has brought them up as non-alerting already. And then I would check them all as before. So click center on selected and click on each one to check that it's in a good position. Now there's one thing on here I will need to change. That's not good. Okay, so zoom in on that and let's move that out of the way. Let's move it up to there. And again, let's go back to the route. So that's better. That's okay. Okay, so if we look at this piece here, it's come down here and then it's gone back. So that's something I'd want to correct. So maybe I'd like it to come down this road here, Samford Hall. Okay, so there's a couple of ways I can do that. I can move this via point with the pointer and move it to a more convenient location, or I can insert a via point as well. So again, if I use the hand tool and go to this section of the route here and just hold down the mouse button, see I've got the snap lines. I can then add another via point down there just like that, and that's sort of corrected it a bit. Let me move this one up to here so we don't have to go back and do a U-turn, and now we've corrected that piece of the route there. So let me just check the final via points. So that's fine as well, and then the end point is there. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Okay, I would rename it. Let's call it Essex Route, CX Route, and that is now ready to be sent to the device. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is send the route to the device. In fact, a couple of things. No, that's all looking good, I think. Yeah, send the route to the device. Now, on the Mac, there's something important you need to be aware of before we send the route to the device. And it's a setting that could really catch you out. And what it is, if we go to BaseCamp and go to Preferences and click on Transfer, there's this setting here under Transferring Routes. Strip shaping points from routes on transfer to the device. If that is selected, what will happen is it will send the route to the device and it will remove all of the non-alerting via points. The route will still work and it will still navigate correctly, but if you deviate from the route or navigate off it, it will recalculate only based on the alerting via points. So it will just change the route completely. So before you send routes to the device, just make sure that is unchecked. I don't really see the advantage of having it checked. No one's made me aware of that yet, but make sure that's unchecked and you should be good to go. I'm going to send it to the Zumo XT and not the SD card. This setting here always match the route to the map on my device when transferring. This generally happens anyway. When you send a route from BaseCamp to the device, it will typically recalculate based on the map it has. If we've taken steps to plot our route accurately and correctly, it should recalculate correctly. So don't worry about that one too much. Okay, so let's go and send some routes to the device. So I'm going to plug the device in. So just out of shot here, I'm going to plug it into the Mac and give it a second to boot up. So what it's going to do is say, in fact, let me show you that quickly. Let's go big device. There we go. So USB mode, entering transfer mode. So click on continue. If you click on cancel, it will just charge off the computer, but it won't do anything too interesting. Okay, so that is now connecting to the computer, and we'll see shortly it will appear on the left. Up here. It takes a couple of seconds to appear. So there we go. And we should start to see it here under my Garmin devices. I'll make sure actually I'll quit Garmin Express because what you find on the Mac, I've found that when I'm connecting devices, sometimes if Garmin Express is running as well, then BaseCamp doesn't pick it up. On the PC, they seem to work quite well at the same time, but on the Mac, it's a bit more sort of picky about joining both of those at the same time. So I'll turn off the view of the device now. Because that's now transferring. Look on the left here, you see it's loading all the maps from the device. So once these are loaded, they're ready to use in BaseCamp as well. If you're using the map from the device and you haven't installed it to the computer, BaseCamp runs a little bit slower, still usable, but it runs a little bit slower. So we'll just give that a second to load. And then we'll look at simulating riding the route. So have a little bit of tea. Were there any other questions from the chat just while we're waiting for this to load? I can't see any thus far. Let me zoom out a bit and see. While that is loading. So we've got texture on this map now. It's picked up a map from the device, so we're getting even more detail. Doesn't take too long, but you can see why it's more convenient to work with the map you've installed to the computer if you're just plotting in general, because it means you don't have to connect the device to the computer and wait for it to load each time. So give that a few more seconds. Almost there. The last two are just loading. Okay, so you see now in this drop-down list, we have a ton of maps. Let me just make that bigger. So all the maps on the device are now selectable, if you like, from this. Let's zoom in on this slightly and see how that is. So there they all are, including the one I installed to the computer. Okay, and on the right here we've got like notification, new tracks found. So it's found some tracks on the device as well. Okay, so if I was going to ride these routes or wanted to ride these routes, I'd send them to the device. So the way I can do this, there's a couple of ways you can do it. The easiest way is to just go to the route, right click on it and choose send to device, and then choose the device and what you want to send. So I want to send routes and waypoints and click on send. And then it will send that route to the device. Now you click close. You can use these buttons up here, so transfer up and transfer down. So click on transfer up. This will send like everything to the device, and similarly transfer down, you can receive all the data from the device, but I would suggest it's easier and better just to choose what you want to do individually so you don't bring in all that data in at once. So again, if I wanted to send this route to the device, right click, send to device, and then send it to the XT and click send again, and give that a second to go across and click close. If you want to receive data from the device, again, rather than just click this transfer down, I'd choose the device and then choose whatever it is you want to take from the device. So here are some active logs or tracks from routes I've been doing recently. Again, you can just right click and copy and then paste it into a list ready to use later. Okay, so now we've sent those routes to the device. Let's go and simulate riding them on the device. Simulating riding routes is really, really useful because it checks the route's going to work correctly. And in particular, if you're doing an overseas trip or if you're a ride leader, it's really handy to run the simulation and just let it run in the background while you're watching television or something like that, just to see if it's going to work, correctly. Particularly if I'm leading a ride, I'll tend to do that. You have to watch the whole thing, but it's just useful to do. Okay, so back on the device, we need to unplug it from the computer. So I'm going to do that next here, and we should see that is now going to boot up in a couple of seconds. So power it back on. That should become bright in a second. And what the device will do is it will prompt us to import the routes we've just sent to it. So here it goes. Right, so I click on agree, and it should say new routes found, import to trip plan. So I'm going to click yes, and I'm going to import the Essex route and the lap of Hyde Park and click on import. And you see it's recalculating those on the device. So now if I go to apps, trip planner, and go to save trips, we should have a lap of Hyde Park Mac and we have Essex route. So let's go to lap of Hyde Park Mac. The first thing I would do typically is go and click on map and see if it is what we intended it to be. So that's looking good. That looks like what we intended it to be. Here, for some reason, when I've sent it across, the non-alerting via points have changed to alerting, unless I made a mistake. Let me check that here, just quickly. Yes, okay. So what it's done is correct. So when I, let me go back to BaseCamp. When I went through this, I don't think the second time I created it, or when I created it, I changed the via points to non-alerting, which is why on the device they're appearing as alerting via points. So let's go back to that and see. So you can change these on the device if you want to. So we'll leave one of them. We'll leave Knightsbridge there as alerting. And what I'll do is I'll change this one to non-alerting. And I'll change destination is in an environmental zone. That's fine. And the final one, I'll change it to non-alerting. Okay, so change that on the fly. And you'll notice if we go up to the top as well, the usage mode is set to motorcycling. That's because we used the motorcycling activity profile to send it to the device. Now, if I click on map, I'll see the route again. So now we've got, oh no, it's gone wrong. This happened on the previous seminar as well. It's somehow not seeing these top, or it's misplaced these top non-alerting via points. Okay, so let me see. Why is it doing that now? It's missing those out. Let me see if I change these back. No, it's for some reason when I think this is a glitch actually. When they were changed, they were removed. Okay, so let's see if we can revert that back. So let's go to Lap of Hyde Park. Yeah, Kensington High Street, Knightsbridge, Kensington Road. See if I can delete it and bring it in again. Delete trip, yes. And let's go to import, see if it's still there. Yeah, so I'm going to re-import the original. I'm not going to change it this time. So let's see, map. Okay, so let's run with it as is, because when I changed it, it sort of glitched out. So remember, I changed these to non-alerting and they disappeared, which is maybe a software glitch. Okay, so if we want to simulate driving this route, we need to put the device into GPS simulator mode. So for that, we click on settings and go to navigation and drop down to GPS simulator here. GPS simulated for indoor use, select that. It's starting to try and navigate the route already. So I click on no, and now GPS simulator is enabled. Let's go back to that route. Go to apps, trip planner, save trips, Lap of Hyde Park, Mac, and click on go. Now, what it will do in this instance is it gives you the option as to where you want to start the route, and it will do this in the real world as well. So you can start the route at every alerting via point. In fact, it started navigating one already. Let me just stop that now. Okay, and let me just mute the volume as well so we don't get interrupted. Okay, so let's go back to apps, trip planner, save trips, Lap of Hyde Park, Mac, and click on go. So as I was saying, you get the option to start at any alerting via point you would like. Now, when you're simulating driving the route, if you choose the first via point, what it will do is it will navigate you from your last known location to the start of the route in simulation, normally your house. Now, if you're plotting or practicing routes on the continent, for example, that's undesirable because you don't want to sit through like 3 hours while it goes to the Eurotunnel before it takes you around your route. So when you're simulating riding the route, if you put the destination in as the next destination, click on OK, it'll start to take you around the route. So if I click on Start, there we go. Simulate driving the route, yes. Oh, that is strange. It's taking me directly there. That is very strange. So when I've done this with a PC, it has taken me it's taken me around the route, but maybe because we've more alerting via points this time, it's different. So let's try again, trip planner, save trips, Lap of Hyde Park, let's go and choose the start point. Click on go, destinations in an environmental zone, start, okay. Simulate driving this route, yes. So what this is doing now is it's navigating us from its last known location, which is where we were just simulating, to the start of the route, and then it will navigate us around the route. So I click on the map there. We'll see it's currently over here, and it's going to go back to the start. So you can then go and sit through and watch it navigate around the route if you like. A couple of things to point out from earlier, this option here to skip via point. So if you've missed a via point and it's harassing you to go back to it, or if if you just don't want to go to that via point, you can choose this option to skip via point. Let's go from there. So if I choose that now, it'll skip the next via point in the sequence. I click yes. If we had missed a via point and it was asking us to go back to visit it, then you can also choose to skip via point. On the newer models like the Zemo XT, if you've missed a via point and it keeps prompting you to go back to get it, if you keep ignoring it, eventually it will prompt you with a message, do you want to skip that via point, which is a nice feature. But some people think that's a new feature, but it's not. It's been on the devices since I think since the 550 you've been able to skip via points, but useful function to have. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the second route we sent over, so the Essex route. So I click on apps and go to trip planner and save trips and go to the Essex route. This one has come across as planned. Oh no, it's also changed some of those to alerting via points. I was pretty sure when we sent that across that all of those were non-alerting. So let's go and have a look and see if it was just me making a mistake. So let's go to Essex route. No, I mustn't have changed. I thought I changed all of those as well. Okay, well, we'll send it across again just for a variation. But again, with this route here, we can choose, if we go simulate driving this route, let's go, bring it up at the end, go, it should take us around the route. No, we're not having much luck with that today. Okay, so let's go back to the start. That's okay, except through the environmental zone. Yeah, and that was the point I was making earlier. It's navigating us from where we are up to the start of the route, and that's something we want to avoid. So look, I'm going to send these routes to it again and see if we can do a better job. So let's go cancel, and go back to the beginning. Okay, I'll plug it back into the PC. USB, there we go. I'm going to try harder. Okay, so let me bring that back now. So let's change these. Let's go to the map on the device installed. Yeah. It's not rendering at the moment, which is a bit of a problem. Oh Lord, there we go. That's not good. We're not having the best time of it with BaseCamp today. So let's go to there we go. Okay, so I'm going to change my Essex route now. Let's change all these to non-alerting. Don't alert on arrival. Essex route, let's call it 2 Mac. And the lap of Hyde Park, let's change that as well to don't alert on arrival. Mac 2. Okay. And the device should appear shortly. So might have to just give it a minute. There we go. Whew. I was getting a little bit worried. So it should start to appear. There we go. On the left. Yeah. Maybe I just was a bit too impatient. So let's go and send these routes to the device. So that has all loaded. So let's send route 2. Send to device. Send and close, and lap of Hyde Park 2 again. Send to device. Send and close. And let's try again. So let me bring back the device view, which is here, and I'm going to unplug it, power it up. So I have another question in the chat just while that's loading up. So if I deviate from the route for whatever reason, what is the easiest way to get back onto it if the next via point is still ahead? Okay, so if you deviate from the route, let me explain this correctly. If we've created a robust route with enough via points and we deviate from it, the device will take us to the next via point in the sequence, which is why it's useful to have via points. So the device will bring you back there is the answer to that. So new routes found, import to trip planner, yes. So Essex Route 2 and Lap of Hyde Park 2, let's go import. And let's try this again. So I'm going to go to apps, trip planner. Let me check that GPS simulator is switched on. So settings, navigation, GPS simulator, which is there, is enabled. Okay. Right. Let's go to apps, trip planner, save trips, Lap of Hyde Park, Mac 2. Okay. So if we click on the map now, that looks correct. That was what I wanted to send initially. You see, we've got a start point, an end point, and non-alerting via points. Now, if we click on go, and I choose the end destination and click on OK, it's now going to take us around this route, which is what I was trying to show earlier. So I click on start, and here we go. So simulate driving this route, yes. So we're starting at the start point. We're going to go around the route and pass all of the non-alerting via points. I'm not sure why it went wrong earlier. I'll try and figure that out as to why it went wrong when we changed it and so on. But this is what I intended to show you. And now similarly, if we go to Essex, so let's go and stop this route here and go to apps, trip planner, save trips. It was Essex Route 2 Mac. Again, go and choose the destination, click on OK. There's our route. Click on start. Simulate driving this route, yes. And I'm now on the B1057. And I'm going to slow down here to 21 miles an hour to take this left-hand bend. And then once I'm around this corner, you'll see the bike starts to accelerate. So within this view, there's a couple of other interesting things you can do. If you click on the map here, you can choose this option, start to finish, which will show you the whole of the route there, or go back to just tracking the bike if you like. I go back. Within here, you can also click on the top and see all the turns that are coming up. And if we click on the map, we can see another view of the map and zoom in and zoom out. A couple of other things to point out. See that next via point there, that blue one. If I choose skip via and click yes, that one will disappear and it will recalculate based on the remaining via points. So it's still going to take us on the route because the next one is further along this road, but you'll see how that works. That works as well. So that was pretty much what I wanted to show you today. There's more things you can do, like importing routes from tracks, but I made a video and published that I think last week on how to do that as well, and also plotting routes in Google Maps and importing them to the device. I made a video about that as well. So those are there for reference. If you have any questions, you can send those to me as well. But so from today, we've looked at aligning our device profiles, which worked well. We've looked at installing BaseCamp. We've looked at how to get the detailed map. We've looked at how to make the map more useful. We've looked at plotting simple and complex routes, the route structure, so alerting and non-alerting via points, and sending those to the device so that we can simulate riding them before we do it in the real world. So thanks to everyone who joined. I will try and figure out why a couple of those things went wrong, but that's part of the experience, I suppose, as well. If you have any further questions, please do send them through to me, and I'll see what I can do for that. But other than that, thanks so much for joining me this evening, and have a good evening. We look forward to the next live stream in a month. In a month's time, I think I'm going to show how to plot routes on the device directly. So you can generate routes using the trip planner app here. So you can build an entire trip on the device and not use BaseCamp, and you can also use this to modify existing routes as well. So I'm thinking that would be a good subject for a future video, because it's very useful if you're out in the field, or if you've done no planning. Fun example is if you've done no planning and you've just jumped on a Eurotunnel and ended up in France and you're trying to figure out what your next move is, you can plot really complex routes on the device as well. It's using a paper map and using the trip planner app. So yeah, we'll look at that maybe next. Thanks for all of those of you who've joined. If you have any feedback, please do send it back, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you, and good night.